president said there's got to be broad sacrifice. Yeah. Why can't you say whether you'll specifically endorse this plan and what you intend to do as a party, as the leader, to make some painful choices?
Well, it would be absolutely irresponsible to sit here on a Sunday talk show and blow the talks by starting to endorse and rule out things. What I'm saying is, this is the roadmap. We need to sit down with the president, see what we can do together, because the only way we will actually accomplish something, I want to actually accomplish something.
But do you endorse these specific proposals?
What I endorse is the effort to underscore the magnitude of the problem.
Well, Republican leader Mitch McConnell was fudging there over how hard he's going to push going forward, but it is very much a question. The Fiscal Commission's plan to reduce the deficit may be down. Only 11 of a required 14 panelists were likely to support it Friday, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily dead. Would Americans have voted for it? With its proposed cuts to Medicare and raised retirement age, it was pretty hawkish stuff, but 3 Democrats voted in favor. And when it comes to this debate, a lot of people are saying there's a democracy deficit. I'm joined by Demos Distinguished Senior Fellow and co-founder and columnist for the American Prospect, Robert Kuttner. Bob, welcome back to GRITtv.
Thank you so much.
What do you think? Dead or only damaged, this deficit commission plan?
Well, I think the plan is dead, but I think the ghost lingers on. The whole ideology that says the deficit is more important than the recovery is alive and well, and of course that's crazy. If you want to get the deficit down, you do the recovery first. Then the economy starts employing people, people start paying taxes again, the deficit comes down. They have it completely backwards.
That was, after all, the idea of the commission, or at least that was the name of it, fiscal responsibility. How did it get to be all about the deficit?
Well, you had people like Peter Peterson, a billionaire, put $1 billion of his own money into this kind of propaganda. You've got economic elites banging on this drum that the deficit is the problem, when of course the collapsed banking system and the depression is the problem.
Where do Americans stand? I mean, I've seen polls all over the map. Before the election, it seemed like almost nobody cared about the deficit if it was contrasted with jobs and the economy. After, in the last few days, we've seen the numbers of people who say that they care go up.
Polls have not changed much. We did a wonderful piece in the Prospect that I commend to your viewers. It's at prospect.org. It's called Deficit Attention Disorder. It's by 2 political scientists. They looked at every poll there is. People care about the recovery, people care about jobs, people care about public investment, preserving services, preserving Social Security. The idea of cutting the deficit, it's only economic elites who have drunk this Kool-Aid.
So what about all those Democrats, or at least the 3 of them, Kent Conrad, Dick Durbin? Dick Durbin supported this proposal, this plan, as it was.
Well, Ken Conrad is a famous or infamous Democratic deficit hawk. Durbin was the surprise. The story you hear, I can't document this, but you certainly hear it. He's very, very close to Obama. This was Obama's commission. Obama wanted the commission to succeed. Durbin may well have done this for Obama.
Well, that gets to the presidency.
Yes, it does.
Why do we find Barack Obama on this side of this debate about, as you said, fiscal responsibility, growth, surviving in our economy, and the deficit plan?
I think Obama wrongly, tragically, is convinced that what the people want is conciliation and compromise. And so the tougher the Republicans are on him, the weaker he is on them, and the goalposts keep moving. That's the characterological part of the problem. The political part of the problem is he appointed all these Wall Street people. I mean, he appointed the Bob Rubin team, who got us into this mess in the first place with their conflicts of interest and their deregulation, and then he complemented that with some of the worst people from the Bush team, like Kuttner and Bernanke. Everybody forgets that Kuttner was Hank Paulson's deputy as head of the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. So this is as if Roosevelt had come into office in 1933 and said, I think I'm going to appoint Herbert Hoover's team. That's in effect what Obama did. So these guys are also deficit hawks. So he's got his own temperamental desire to build bridges, reinforced by bad advice.
Here's just a glimpse of how the AFL are capturing the reality for Americans today. Take a look.
I'm Susan Palmer. I'm an apprentice pipe fitter.
I worked for the Detroit Public Schools for 7 years.
building doors for Chevy Traverse.
An out-of-work sheet metal worker, been laid off since April.
I worked at a university research center, and I was laid off in August 2010.
I was a marketing copywriter for several years.
Without the unemployment, I probably wouldn't have a home.
All I see in my future is living in my car.
Yeah, we're waiting for our home to be taken.
And I don't want to do that.
Frank Rich talked about Barack Obama having Stockholm syndrome, just keeping going back to his abuser, the people who are giving him grief. America's about to have Stockholm syndrome, I think, keeping on looking for solutions from, well, maybe the wrong sources. Do you think Obama is done for?
I don't know if he's done for, but I know that he's a disaster as a leader in a crisis. He doesn't know how to lead. He doesn't know how to be a progressive. And we all pay the price. It's progressive Democrats who go down the drain, and he's going to be our Herbert Hoover. He's going to be the guy who represents the party that presided over a prolonged economic depression, and then the other party's going to go to town for generations. So I think we as the progressive community have to get out, stop crying in our beer, and organize. And that can take one of two forms. It can organize so that we put enough pressure on him so that in spite of himself he grows a backbone, or it means that at some point in the next year the people who are talking about running a primary candidate against Obama get really serious, and somebody who stands a chance to win, who's not beleaguered with this terrible legacy, is the Democratic nominee in 12.
Well, let's talk about the organizing. I mean, we have a beautiful clip of you from right after the election saying we've got to keep his feet to the fire.
Right.
Those who elected this guy have got to keep out there pushing. Everybody said they were going to do it. Did they not do it?
It's tough. I mean, take the young people who turned out in unprecedented numbers. So when they converted O4A into an arm of the DNC, wholly owned captive, speaking of Stockholm Syndrome of the White House.
Organizing for America.
All of the air went out of that excitement. The labor movement, I think, is doing great work, but it's 7% of private sector workers. There is the beginning of an
Well, let me just stop you right there. What are they getting for that good work? I mean, there's a great message from the AFL in that video that we just saw, very powerful. A labor-backed rally, October 2nd, One Nation, was pretty strong on we need to support this administration because of the alternative. What are they getting for their loyalty to the White House?
They're beating up on him like crazy in private meetings, but that's not enough. They've got to get their people and other people mobilized. And every movement we've got, the immigrant rights movement, the environmental movement, the anti-bank abuse movement, and the labor movement, really have to build a movement, one movement, so that Obama either acts like the progressive president we thought we were electing, or we have a primary campaign to get somebody else who can run and win.
Michael Lerner laid out some examples of who he thought maybe could win or run, at least in 2012, included Susan Sarandon and Rachel Maddow. Who would be your picks?
Well, I'm not quite there yet. I want to do the organizing first. I want to see if he's capable of any change. I suppose the most plausible one would be Howard Dean.
Is Howard Dean really going to be the guy that runs against America's first African-American president, first black president?
Well, you know, I think those of us in the progressive community were post-racial enough to say, we're not voting for this guy because of his color, we're voting for him because of his promise. And if he let us down on the promise, we shouldn't give him an alibi because of his color.
Yeah. Coming back to the deficit, would you agree that something has to be done? And if so, what could be done different from this plan to cut Medicare, to raise the retirement age and all the rest?
Well, they're putting, and by they I mean the Fiscal Commission, the cart before the horse. The horse is the recovery. And Prospect, Demos, EPI, and Century Foundation have a counter plan. Campaign for America's Future has another counter plan. You can read all about them at ourfiscalsecurity.org. Basically, it says, do a ton of public investment now, get a recovery going, and then once unemployment is down to 5.5%, you want triggers? We've got our own triggers. Once unemployment's down to 5.5%, a lot of the deficit will come down just because of the recovery, and at that point you start raising taxes on Wall Street, on rich people. You're cutting the military all along. It's a path to deficit reduction paved by economic recovery. You don't do the deficit reduction first.
But it isn't the path that happens to go through this Congress, clearly.
No, but you know, Harry Truman in 1948 put out the proposals, the policies, the legislation that he knew the country needed. He dared the Republicans to vote against it. He got reelected, and the Democrats picked up 75 seats in the House. So you put out the program that the country needs, you educate the public. This is a very articulate president. We've got other articulate leaders who are not president. You educate the public, you put out the program the country needs, you organize around it, and then if Congress doesn't pass it, so much the worse for them.
Bob Kuttner writes for the American Prospect, among other places, the Huffington Post every Monday, and his book, we'll link to it at our website, GRITtv.org.